I'd like to say a few quick words about Darmstadt, because you may not be familiar with the city. It's much smaller than San Antonio, although they have things in common and some contrasts very quickly. It has about 158,000 people in the city, and what they call there the larger urban zone of about 431,000 inhabitants. But it's also much wealthier than San Antonio. As a matter of fact, it's one of the wealthiest cities in Europe. Darmstadt holds the official title of City of Science, or Wissenschaftsstadt. Not too bad, not too bad. Thank you. It's a major center of scientific institutions. It's got universities and a lot of high technology companies. It also is a center for research into heavy ion, and they have a number of chemicals, number of elements that were discovered there, including Darmstadtium. So we need to come up with San Antonio. I'd like to know about Copernicus too. That sounds interesting. We do have a couple of special connections. Darmstadt is the home now of Merck Pharmaceuticals, which is the city's largest employer. And many of you in San Antonio have heard of the Kronkowski Foundation. Interesting little historic fact. Albert Kronkowski Sr. was an early investor in Merck and passed a large amount of stock onto his son Albert Jr. And Albert continued to build his holdings so that by the time Albert died, he was the largest single individual stockholder. When he died in 1991, he had 5.9 million shares at about $60 per share, so that's about $35.5 million. With no heirs, Albert and his wife donated those stocks to the Kronkowski Foundation as a substantial part of assets of a total of $295 million. So it's one of the largest, probably the two largest foundations in San Antonio. The other thing we have in common is that Darmstadt was formerly the capital of a sovereign country, the Grand Duchy of Hesse, and its successor, the People's State of Hesse, a federal state of Germany. And of course, San Antonio should have been the capital of Texas when it was an independent nation from 1836 to 1845. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Jochen Partsch, who has been in politics since the late 1970s. In 1983, he helped found the political party Die Grünen. And all you remember from your German in college is that it stands for the Green. It's the Green Party. He chaired the party from 2003 to 2006, became deputy mayor of Darmstadt in 2006 with responsibility for social affairs, youth, housing, employment policy, women's policy, and intercultural affairs. I think all that's left is fixing the streets and picking up the garbage. He has been mayor since, actually, Lord Mayor, and I've already gotten hints that Ron has title envy here. He's Lord Mayor of Darmstadt. So I think later on I'll give some of Ron's before we start with the first question from him, his credentials in this area. Would you two please join me? I also learned that they share something in common besides German heritage. You have a bit of German in here?
Yeah, generations back.
Yeah. Both great fans of the Doors. So, Mayor Partsch, your city is the City of Science, but has also received 4 consecutive awards for Germany as Germany's City of the Future. So tell us about that award and what you've done to earn those awards.
Yeah, hello from my side. Thank you for the possibility to discuss about these questions. In fact, it's right. Darmstadt is the fourth time City of the Future in Germany. There are an economic magazine, Wirtschaftswoche, which analyze the power, the performance, the scientific background of the different cities in Germany. And the Wirtschaftswoche has the result, they come to the result that there is no other city in Germany with that good cooperation between science and economy. The high performance is because of the very good cooperation between science and economy, and the science you spoke about, the Darmstadt, we have the GSI, an enterprise who is searching to heavy iron research, and they get the last 20 or 30 new elements on the periodic table. And I will take your proposal of the San Antonio back to Darmstadt. So perhaps we are not only sister cities in reality, also at the periodic table. But a joke.
I think we should be right next to each other.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but a little bit later. in this dimension. So back to your question. All of us know the business of these rankings, City of the Future. Usually, rankings has to bring out new results. That you have a new winner. This is exciting news. But if there is a city four times each year after the other the winner, this makes us a little bit proud. And this magazine make no political award. They analyzed the real situation in the city, and the situation is caused by what are the key facts. I think the key fact is, first of all, we are together with Leipzig the fastest growing city, but not only growing with in the quantity of the residents. We are also the city with in a relationship with the most high skilled workers in Germany. We are a city with a lot of young people. For example, two days for this, we have about 160,000 residents and about 45,000 students. This relationship shows that it's a very young city. And what is the history and the background for this development? Our city was all the time a very curious and cosmopolitan place. I think this is the most important key fact. Like you spoke about the Grand Duke of Hesse, the state of Hesse, Ernst Ludwig. He founded 100 years ago the Mathildenhöhe, an ensemble, art nouveau, new style, and a life reform of life movement. It's not only just buildings. It was an inspiring idea. How is it possible to go to the future with all dimensions? So we are, you can say we are innovative by nature, by tradition. The second, I think the second historic point is Darmstadt was till 1945 the capital of Hesse, of the so-called Volksstaat Hessen. And Darmstadt was destroyed in the Second World War. Nearly 90% of the downtown city was destroyed. Over 10,000 residents was killed in one night by a British bombing. Our 9/11, 1944. 10,000 of people were refugees and had to go in the countryside. And after we lost the capital identity and the loss of so many residents and so the destroy of the civil character of the city in the Nazi period, we have to reinvent ourselves again. And
Just let me just ask you real quickly. It sounds like you must have had some very valuable assets that you drew that kind of a bombing attack. So you were already a highly technological city, or what was it?
no, at this time it was a city of administration, because it was a capital. Merck, you spoke about Merck. Merck is the oldest chemical pharmaceutical enterprise in the world. Last year, the 350-year anniversary. And Merck was there, and the university. But it was at this time it was more than today a city of administration. So now it's more vibrant. We reinvent us different new enterprises was founded, and it was many of the politicians and of the civil society, many actors are convinced that it is necessary to support the cultural side of the development. We have the German Academy for Language and Poetry is located in Darmstadt. The German Penn Center is located in Darmstadt. The German-Polish Institute is located in Darmstadt. So we have a lot of technical institutions, but also of institutions with social sciences and political science, and so this together with the young and curious and cosmopolitan residence structure, we are always on the march to the future.
Can you give me an example or two of the kind of innovations that led to you getting those awards?
Yeah, perhaps the plexiglass. You know the plexiglass. Yeah, plexiglass was founded in Darmstadt. This was in the 1920, 1930. And newer ones is the Merck. Yeah, the lot of the inside life of your cell phones are founded by Merck, and and especially the heavy ion researchers. 20, 30 of the last periodical elements are founded in Darmstadt.
So they were talking about those kind of scientific and commercial advances that come out of scientific research. Interesting. Well, let's hear a bit from Ron Nirenberg, who was elected mayor almost 2 years ago. Upset an incumbent for the first time, I think in about 20 years, or there was one before, and I think it was a bit longer. With campaigning on the issue of moving San Antonio, he was able to tap into a sense that we were somewhat at a stagnant level. And in the first 2 years, he spent a whole lot of time. Tradition in San Antonio is to have citizen involvement in coming up with plans for the future, and has had 3 major initiatives, and maybe I might be missing something, but one of them in housing, low-income housing is a very big issue here, very big problem something we have to deal with, transportation, and then general sustainability, coping with climate change that we're already beginning to feel the effects of. So already he's come out with ambitious plans in those areas, and now is time to actually start implementing it. But what else would you say about why San Antonio should be discussed as a city of the future?
Well, thank you for having me, Rick, and it's wonderful to be here with Lord Mayor Partsch from our sister city. You know, our pitch for San Antonio is that it is already a city of the future in the sense that we are, as Steve Murdoch said many years ago, the face of America's future. So what happens here and how we cope with the challenges of the 21st century have impact not just in our own backyard, but across the United States. I think the first thing to note is that we are a fast-growing city. In fact, empirically, I believe San Antonio is now the fastest-growing city in the country. Where our demographic makeup, though, is of a mix that most American cities are anticipating looking like San Antonio in a few decades from now. So our strategy has been to look forward at the challenges and figure out ways that we can plan to address them, accommodate them, and create opportunity out of them. We're planning a multimodal transportation system, one that San Antonio has never had before, for the first time, in a way that is cost-effective, but also can advance and make use of the future technologies that we know are coming down the pipe, from autonomous mass transit vehicles to the microtransit that are already part of our streetscapes right now. Our affordable housing issue, we're getting ahead of an affordable housing crisis that most American cities are deeply experiencing right now, in a way that acknowledges the fact that people are changing the way they live. They're living, in many cases, younger people are finding places to live closer to where they work, and it's changing the way that people move around the city. From a climate standpoint, people are beginning to hear, and will continue to hear more of, how we need to shape our systems around lower emissions, cleaner air, and more sustainable energy production in the future. All of those, though, I think are cast within a frame of equity. One of the great American experiences that's occurring right now is that no matter where you live in a big city across the country, there are people who have lived with the benefits of that growth and economic prosperity, and then there are many people, increasingly large numbers of people, who have been having the total opposite experience. So whether it's transportation, housing, climate adaptation, job creation, or any number of issues, we're tackling those with a frame of how can we make that growth, how can we make that progress equitable for all citizens. I think that's one area where San Antonio is poised to lead. We've already been recognized as one of the first big cities in the country, if not the first, to budget our very basic street resources and essential services around this notion of equity. But we're also taking it much further than that, up to and including the ways we deal with climate adaptation. So I would say that is certainly a feature of it.
Give us an example of what you're talking about with streets. It's a pretty simple idea for us. It means giving more money to the parts of town, more low-income parts of town, that have been neglected over the last 50 years or more. But how about in terms of climate change? How does that look?
Well, I'll give you two great examples of that. We know the data shows us, the science is clear. Temperatures are rising, storms are getting more severe and more frequent. Flooding is increasing in communities like San Antonio. Unequivocally, flooding in certain communities is experienced more harshly than in others. And very typically, as in San Antonio, the worst of those storms is in the areas that are most disadvantaged, just by the way our city was developed. So we have to have strategies around how we can improve the infrastructure in those areas to deal with those situations in an equitable manner, meaning that a lot of resources for stormwater and flooding infrastructure has to be geared towards areas that have been underinvested in for years. The other is how we create an energy portfolio that people can afford. San Antonio has some really difficult choices to make. I mean, I don't think there would be a soul in this audience, for instance, that wouldn't love for us to be 100% solar tomorrow. The truth of the matter is, if we made that kind of investment, those expenses would fall disproportionately on families who can least afford that investment. So we have to be mindful of the fact that different people in our community have different abilities to invest in the public space as it relates to energy portfolio or anything else. So we have to be mindful of that as we work towards consensus goals like energy sustainability and renewables and things like that. It just, we have to understand our city is not a totally equitable place, and it's not different than any other city in the country. And as we make progress towards goals that are good for the entire community, we have to moderate that based on the experience that folks have, vulnerable communities especially.
It sounds like we've got, in a sense, two different, at least not necessarily definitions, but emphases on the future. Yours being more scientific, technological, and ours being more dealing with the fact that we represent identity of the ethnic. We're a very large Hispanic population, have a substantial African American population, and a city council that in some ways is already on the way, in that the majority of them, one's black, 6 are Hispanic, every one of them has an advanced degree. So it's even the ones from the low-income part of town are from places like Stanford.
Well, I'll just add, and I'll be brief, but our most significant investments, though, in the future will have to be in human capital. And, you know, what I'm most excited about the next several years in San Antonio is the creation of these great collaborative enterprises at Texas A&M San Antonio, the downtown campus, which will be truly transformative of the University of Texas San Antonio with the School of Data Science, National Security Collaboration Center, which will change the degree fields that are bringing jobs to San Antonio. But most importantly, the fact that very soon in our city, within the next 3 years, every student in Bexar County we will be able to say to every student in Bexar County, they will have access to higher education or technical training in these fields that we're creating jobs. Biosciences, cyber, IT, advanced manufacturing, where we have now become, like Darmstadt, a city that is enlightened but is creating future industry jobs.
I would like to take just a few minutes, and they've both been, full disclosure, warned about this, I understand, but it's true. But you both had an opportunity to spend some time in each other's cities. And so I'd like to ask you, Lord Mayor, what have you seen here that you might want to take back home? And then I'll ask the same question of Brian.
Okay. This is a tough question because Ron and me, we are not just colleagues. When it's allowed to say this, we are friends. So I don't want to rob San Antonio. It's not a good idea.
San Antonio has not been patented or copyrighted.
Okay. What would I take with me? Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of common situations. Yeah, we have San Antonio and Darmstadt has a fascinating, curious people. Yeah, most of the time very friendly.
I'm holding back from asking about the other part.
So, and we are both cities are innovative. We are looking forward to the future, yeah, and we are not in fear of the future. And we are both growing cities. So, and this is like the dark side of the moon. You have also challenges or problems in our city. You have lots of problems with the traffic. You have no space for very, very small space for new housing areas.
The housing prices are very
housing prices, and also each social infrastructure project was discussed by civil protests and discussions about this. We have also this NIMBY phenomenon, not in my backyard. So if I have the chance to take some of the very wide and spatial space of San Antonio, only 5 square kilometers.
But he wants them downtown.
This would be perfect. Yeah, some space. We are so narrow, and we are in the metropole region, Frankfurt Rhine-Main area. Yeah, we have so much traffic, and we are so dynamic, but we have not really a chance to get new space, and that is a very difficult.
We can give you some. We can name it after you have to come visit it, though.
Okay.
So Ron, now that San Antonio has made up the beer garden with all the local breweries, what else would you like?
Significant, yeah.
It was, but they're doing well on that.
Yeah.
But you've been to Darmstadt. What did you see there that would be of interest to us?
Well, I don't know if anybody caught this, but Lord Mayor was describing the 350th anniversary of Merck. I mean, imagine that a single company that has now celebrated 350 years of existence has changed society. I mean, it's part of their tradition. You know, the best way I could describe my experience at Darmstadt and observing not only the leadership of Lord Mayor, but his council as well as the citizens in general and universities, it is an enlightened community, an enlightened society. What I love about Darmstadt is this notion that it is a city of science back 350 years, but it infuses everything that they do. You know, the way you hear citizens talking about the pride in the city and what the city stands for, it very much is imbued with this notion that it is leading the world from an intellectual standpoint. I think that's amazing. The first thing we did when we came to Darmstadt, I remember we had just gotten off a plane from Israel, and we got to watch the ceremony of the laying of the Stolperstein, which is a stumbling block. It's a little brass or gold block that's laid in stone that commemorates a Jewish person or a gypsy or someone who was seized by the Nazis during World War II. But it's enlightened about its history and the fact that now we had a wonderful visit with one of the nonprofits that was in Germany, who was talking about the way they help with the refugee crisis, having a very strong leadership position in the refugee crisis in Europe. I just feel like they know who they are in terms of the intellectual capital that they bring to some of society's deepest problems, and it is infused in the way they talk about their community, and that's something that, our city is 1.5 million people. We have lots of different cultures and experiences, but there's this notion that Darmstadters know that they are a city of science and they're prideful about it.
And that it's fascinating because we've all, I think, in recent years given thought to the issue of how we remember our past. And of course, you dealt with the issue of taking down a Civil War statue. Can you imagine putting up a monument to the fact that San Antonio, the city of San Antonio, actually voted against seceding? Although Bear County didn't.
That's a good idea, right? but also, it's also the Matilda Hall and there's art pieces throughout the city. You walk around, there's public art everywhere, and that's also something I'd like to see more of.
All right, we have 20 seconds for questions. This is really terrific to have that thing. Ron suggested that they get one of those for City Hall. For City Council meetings, but I think he meant it for the citizens to be heard portion.
No.
2-1-0. Thank you very much, folks.